Coach Boral from Fontbonne University, son of St. Louis, coming back. Pretty pumped about that. Long time at Lindenwood, more than a minute, by the way. But also Southwest Baptist, and then building this awesome program. Bringing it. Like, I mean, that's the main thing about for me is like, how do you start a college program?
Yeah, that was interesting. Most other places you go to a place and you have a head coach saying, hey, here's what we need you to do, and there you come in and there's nothing.
Yeah.
Not only because you don't have a head coach, but because there's no program. So, you just start making a list and checking away over everything from ordering girdles and shoulder pads to jerseys, and kind of now the nice fun thing about it was you get to create the identity of the program that you want. So trying to build that, and we're ever evolving and learning. I don't have all the answers. Yeah. Definitely didn't have all the answers to be a head coach, which you never do, let alone starting a program. But it's been fun. It's been a great learning experience, and we're just going to continue to plug away at it.
I mean, it's because obviously they do have an athletic department. So, but that guy or gal has never done I got these shoulder pads, and you obviously playing the game, being around the game, you're like, no, we're not using Schutt or Rydell anymore. We're using this, and it's just kind of like, hey, man, don't bite my head off with it, right?
Yeah, they didn't have anything, and the AD at the time, she recently got out of college athletics, but she had never been a part of anywhere that had a football program. So just kind of trying to explain all of the startup costs, and they've been great. My administration has been awesome, so it was never like, oh, you can't do that, but it was a learning curve, I think, for them too, especially our AD who had never been around football. Just, what? It's going to cost that much to start? And I'm like, well, yeah, we got to order helmets, shoulder pads, everything, from scratch, brand new. So it's been awesome.
How has the recruiting been for this? Because I knew about sprint football because, as you can tell, I'm 5'7", and despite this body I have now, at one time I was a 5'7" linebacker, so I knew about it from the Naval Academy.
Right.
And I'm originally from the Northeast, and it's kind of big up there because I think the Ivies have some teams.
Right, some of the Ivies have it. It's been around up there for 80 to 90 years.
But it was a service academy, really big in the service academy,
Right.
And when I was applying to Navy, they were like, you want to play sports? And I'm like, dude, I can't compete at the FCS or FBS or Division 1A at the time level. They're like, no, we have this thing called sprint football. And I was like, seems like my speed, man.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not my speed, but I could do this.
Right,
Yeah.
my size.
I could. I'm a left tackle now, man.
Right. That's been interesting. That first year was a lot of just getting the knowledge of what sprint football was out because, like you said, Northeast, those schools and high schools and coaches know about it. Anything west of probably West Virginia has never heard of it. So the first year was a lot of education. And then this year it's been easier just because of our league being around. You still have to explain it to probably 30% of the kids you're recruiting, maybe a couple more than that. But the knowledge is there. So the nice part is the same conversation doesn't happen every single time. Is like, what is that? So we're trying to continue to expand the game. We've got 2 other teams joining the league this year. So instead of being at 6 teams, we'll be at 8. And we're always looking to add a few more. I think at some point we probably need to stop because there's only so many 5'7", 180-pound offensive linemen out there in the country. But I think it's great to give these guys that are a little bit undersized, that are still great football players. But with the transfer portal, especially nowadays, they're just getting overlooked. And they're no lack of their own fault. God didn't make them 6'1", 190 pounds, 250 pounds, whatever it may be. So to give them a chance to play has been awesome.
Do you think the transfer portal for you, I know we're kind of jumping around, but I think it's important to talk about this. Has it kind of benefited you in these other programs, whether especially a sprint program where a kid's like, man, I have a with a PWO at Mizzou or another school, and then you're just kind of like, do I really want to deal with that when they have 3 other wide receivers coming in from X school? Is that change a lot of conversations, you think?
I think the biggest change, at least for me and where I'm at, is it's not so much that. It's that, a kid that I recruited a kid last year was on our team. He visited, it's more of a trickle down. So he visited Northwest Missouri State. Well, 2 years ago, I think, well, maybe not 5 to 10 years ago, Northwest Missouri State may not give him a big scholarship offer, but offers him, a developmental thing. And I'm not calling out Northwest Missouri State, just saying that Division II level. He goes on a visit there, weighs 165 pounds. Well, now those Division IIs are looking at like, well, I can go take a kid from the transfer portal that's played.
Like they just took a kid from Minnesota.
Correct, Minnesota, or even, I can take another D2 transfer and then one AA transfer that may not have played that's a full-grown human being at this point, and rather than waste the time to necessarily develop a smaller kid. So I think that's where it's changed, is some of these smaller kids that may have been developmental guys at that D2 NAI level, it just continues to trickle down that other people are around that normally weren't around.
I feel like it's important to have all these like conversations with different coaches, because when we think of the transfer portal, we think of Miami to Ohio State and this school to that school, where we'll see it on ESPN. But it's always, and I do this with like quarterback retirements, right? Like when Tom Brady last year, he didn't retire. That's another guy not having a job. That means like another guy's not on a practice squad. That means another guy has to go to the XFL or USFL. So like 9 people's lives are affected.
Correct.
And I feel like that, for especially like you were talking about that Division II level, it's like where you have those fringe guys who have those like preferred walk-on at local college, FCS college or FBS college. Now it's just like it's all trickling down, and like as coaches, I think it has put you guys in not only navigating the NIL stuff, but at every level, it's just like these kids are just like, what am I doing right now? Like it has changed the entire landscape for everyone.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's every level is affected differently. I have a buddy that's a coordinator at a big-time Division I school, and he said, he went from a smaller school, and at one point he said, we're recruiting year-round now. Not only are you just, and you always were to some extent, right? But now, at the end of the year, you're recruiting your own players to stay, which you never had to worry about before. Then you're recruiting your high school kids. You're still recruiting your normal transfers. Now you have someone at that type of level that's dedicated to the transfer portal usually only. So it's just a 12-month cyclical thing of after spring ball re-recruiting your own players. If you do lose someone, then jump in the transfer portal. So I think it's changed every level to some extent. I was up in Alaska working in that camp this past week. And
how was that? I was going to comment on your tan, but there's not much of a tan.
Not much of a tan. It was, I think we saw the sun maybe twice in the 7 days I was up there. It was nice to get a break from the St. Louis heat.
Yeah, it was nice muggy humidity of nonsense.
Oh, yeah. It was only like 65 up there the whole time. But just running those coaches, Division II level, there were a couple of coaches up. They were, we were normally done in the summer. They're still looking to add 5 transfers, and it's totally changed the game.
How's your in-house recruiting as far as kind of keeping, because when you get like a 17-year-old, he might not be 5'7", 180 his whole time.
Right.
So is that something I don't want to give keys to the keys to the program here, but do you look at like parents and you're like, okay, this guy's dad is like 5'9"? Like, is that something that gets factored into this? And I don't know if you guys do this when you have a good player when he's 5'11" and his dad's 6'5". You might take a risk because he is a 17-year-old. Is it the same thing, but for you as well, or?
Yeah, for us, it's always kind of interesting, because like you said,
because the whole thing fascinates me.
Yeah. So for us right now, it hasn't done much, but that's obviously we're in year 1 going into year 2 of the program. So that's something, that we'll have to have conversations with, I think, in the future. That's something I've been open in recruiting with recruits about that are kind of on that fringe, close to the number. And I always tell these guys, and it's the truth, is if you come here and you are a really, really good player, and let's say, or you way out, like I'll help you get somewhere else.
Yeah.
I want you to find the best fit for you. And hopefully that's here right now. If it's not, it's not. But if down the road, you come ball out for us at the sprint level and a D2 wants to call you, I'm not going to be a guy that's going to lie about you or try and stop you. If you don't want to be here, whether it's one reason or another, I'm not a coach that's going to re-recruit you too hard.
Yeah.
And I have the luxury at this level. Other levels probably wouldn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
But I want guys that want to be part of our program and help build it. So we haven't had that yet, but I can definitely see it coming in the future.
Has that kind of been a change from Lindenwood and Southwest as far as like this is more like a grooming of young men versus like getting them to the NFL and whatnot? Because you had a couple guys like get opportunities at Lindenwood and whatnot. Is that kind of just like changed as more of like a pseudo father figure in more aspects. Like I don't,
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I would say, there's a lot less of those aspirations.
Yeah.
So these kids, I think, I'm not saying kids at other levels or guys at other levels don't love the game. But,
Yeah.
If you have a 5'7", 160-pound offensive tackle or our center, for example, he's not playing to try and make it to the NFL or make it to the XFL or USFL. He's playing because he wants a college degree and loves the game of football.
Yeah.
Now, we still have guys in recruiting that are like, well, Coach, I don't know about sprint because I'm not going to get to the NFL. And I'm like, well, you're probably not going to get to the NFL wherever you go, no offense, but because of your size. So I think every kid has that dream a little bit. When it sets in is different. But I would say as a whole, you do have guys that are doing it truly for the love of the game. I don't know that we have a ton of guys that are aspiring to play at the next level. So I like to think it's more of a father figure, but we just take the guys and try and mold them into the best men that they can become.
I was talking to Coach B from Mobap last week, and something he's done, and it's on the show, so I don't feel like I'm unveiling a secret, but he's taken the measurables and like of every prototypical size, and then he's taken their combine numbers, and it's like, you want to go to the NFL, that's fine.
Oh yeah.
Where do you match in this? And then it gets, the thing comes back down to earth a little bit, and that's something I've talked with a lot of coaches about is when you have, I want to go to the NFL, and it's like, I know Dede was after you, right?
I played with Dede for a while, yeah.
So it's like the guys you've coached, it's like, okay, you want to do that, here's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing that?
Yeah, that's always been a tough thing as a coach because you never want to, squash anybody's dreams.
They all say the same
So
thing.
you try and, tell it to them like he does, like, let's look at the guys that make it to the NFL. That D lineman's 6'5", 290 pounds and still runs a 4.75 40.
Yeah.
But they have to come to that realization on their own.
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't know. Sometimes and sometimes there's that fringe guy, that they may develop, they may not develop. So I think the best thing we can do as coaches is be honest with them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily squash their dreams, but tell them where we see them. I had a player from the St. Louis area at Southwest Baptist really wanted to play at the next level, and I said, listen, you're not going to be able to play in the NFL. No offense, but that's not who you are. You didn't get enough snaps here. You didn't dominate enough at the Division II level to make it happen. But there's other options. There's other leagues. So the best thing you can do is continue to get bigger, faster, stronger, put it on tape, and hopefully one of those other leagues you can go. And then who knows? Maybe after one of those two leagues you can go to the next level.
Getting back to sprint, has it changed your schemes as a coach, like going from Division II and whatnot to coming here as far as are we adjusting the playbook a little bit more? Are we utilizing the athleticism a little bit more? Like, has that kind of adjusted your play calling and whatnot with your coordinators and everything like that?
I'm running the defense, and I thought it would be a little different from a play calling standpoint. Really, it's not as big of a difference as I thought it would be. The nice things, as a defensive coordinator, that's a little different. Let's say you're getting a tight end and a end of a formation, so a nub side. Well, I can walk up my corner and not be as afraid that my corner is going to get completely physically dominated. So it makes it a little more simple in certain scenarios, but as a whole, I would be running the same stuff that I'm running at. If I was at the Division II level, Division I level, there's just some conflicts that I don't have to worry about quite as much as I would at those levels.
Because in my mind, I would just run like a pseudo 46 defense and just kind of get my athletes out. Well, I assume everyone's athletic, but it's get my athletes out there, have a bunch of pseudo hybrid linebacker safeties, just play ball, make plays, have fun.
Yeah, that's what we do. We run a 3-3-5, and we try and keep it simple and get our athletes running around, like you said, and create a little bit of confusion. And it was good for us this year. So what about the offensive side of the ball for you? Is he just sticking with the stereotypical spread a lot of these teams are doing? We were spread last year. We hired a new offensive coordinator in January. We're going to still be some spread, but I don't want to give away too many secrets to anybody that watches this. But we'll be a little bit different in what we do. He's been in a couple of different places, so again, it's not going to be that different from certain people that you turn on the film for.
It's just going to be a lot of fun.
I think it'll be a lot more fun on that side of the ball for our guys this year, and a lot more fun, hopefully, for our fans to watch.
Now you're bringing a lot of kids from Texas. How is that happening?
We are.
I saw like 3, maybe 4.
I think
feel
we're
like there's
bringing in
more.
close to 6 to 10 by the
Yeah.
time it's all said and done this year.
Every time I look on the Twitter, it looks like X place Texas, and I'm like,
Yeah, I recruited Texas for 9 years between Lindenwood and Southwest Baptist. Didn't know if it was going to be very fruitful for me, so I didn't go down there year one, to be honest with you. Then after this first year, saw some of the other schools had some Texas kids, so we decided to give it a go and put a little more time and effort into it. And obviously, it's paying off for us right now. So we feel like it's a good little honeypot for us. There's just so many kids down there.
I mean,
in the DFW Metroplex, you drive 2 minutes, you're at another school. So
yeah, I used to live in Austin for about 5 minutes. I know we talked about it before, but after Brian Woods' first experiment failed, he did the spring league, and I remember watching. It was like 2017. I was back from overseas, like seeing David Ash there, and I think he graduated in like 2014. It's like 2017, and I was like, they were playing at one. I didn't know it was a high school stadium when I walked in, and I was like, this is nuts.
Oh yeah, their stadiums are different down there, which you think would be more difficult to recruit to. Coming from. Not that we got anybody from Allen High School, but Allen High School, $48 million, high school stadium. Coming to Fontbonne, we play at a high school, and we have a nice locker room, but nothing like those people do. But I think those kids that, are getting overlooked or, sometimes maybe a backup on those big levels, they just love the game and want to keep playing.
Yeah.
Because down there, they've grown up around it since they were since they were walking, they were holding the football. So I think there's just a different love for the game than some of these other kids in other areas.
And they're just appreciating the fact that they'll actually be able to play and
Correct.
continue to be on the field and whatnot.
100%.
I think St. Louis, and I want to hear your thoughts on this especially, but like when I started doing these interviews and whatnot, and when you start deep diving into like all the people in St. Louis, and you know better than I, but I think it's got probably one of the most, Missouri in general has one of the most underrated like football talents in the United States. Think about like the guys going to the NFL, XFL, USFL, like being around that. Is that something you kind of tap into when you're talking to these kids a little bit about the rich football culture of Missouri? Because I don't think it gets talked about. Because when you think of high school football to NFL or these other leagues, what do you think about? Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Florida,
California,
yeah.
maybe Ohio. Yeah, I think that's been, that's part of the reason I took the job originally, was just to give back to this football community that I grew up in and get to start a program in there. And that's something that we talked to about the St. Louis guys, but I do think Missouri football is just kind of underappreciated with, like you said, just the number of guys that go to the NFL and all these other leagues. And growing up, I'm like, man, some of the best players. Yeah. And I know everywhere has that story. Some of the best players didn't make it, but, played against Lawrence Maroney when I was in high school.
He left me on red, by the way. I asked him to come on the show, and I just saw red.
Yeah, he my first ever play, we were playing Normandy. I was a sophomore, and he played D-end as well as running back, so he rushed for like 350 against us, and we threw a pick to him my first ever play. I remember just grabbing a leg and hoping somebody else would tackle him because he was so big, and I was just a tiny little sophomore.
It's funny. I heard my buddy, he was in the Marine Corps. Well, a lot of my buddies were, but when he was in the service, he played against Adrian Peterson down south, and guy ran for like 4 carries, like 200 yards, 4 touchdowns, and it was just like, damn.
That's what Lawrence did to us. It was like 12 carries, 350 yards, like 6 touchdowns.
Just so
we had no answer.
Yeah. Well, it's like the same thing, like Monty Ball, same way up here, like Zeke. And then it's like there's so many other guys. Like I just think the talent is so underappreciated in this faction, and like coming from Lindenwood to kind of see all that as well, playing with Dede. Granted, he's from like Oklahoma, I think.
He's from Oklahoma, yeah.
And then was Pierre there? Were you there?
Pierre, yep. I coached while Pierre was there.
So how has that been as well? Like we talked about earlier, to like translate that to like the experience to the kids as well, because I'm sure they ask you all the time, or if they don't know, they should know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Lindenwood was a great experience for me. Not only playing with some great players. I mean, we had some dudes when I was there. I think we had probably 10 kids, whether I played with them or coached with them that made it, at least to camps. And then getting to see just the transition of where I was when Lindenwood, I got there in 2005. Now you look at Lindenwood in 2023 and see where it's where it was to where it is now. You know, we used to, on official visits back in the day, we would kind of avoid our locker room so kids didn't know what they had to change in, and now it's gorgeous. You know, it looks like Oklahoma State's or Mizzou's. So to see that grow up and be there through part of that transition and kind of say you were there to help start, you know, the growth of it has been an awesome experience. And that's kind of what we're trying to do where we're at, right? Start a program. Now they didn't start it with me, but kind of model that same fashion and grow it and help support Fontbonne and just the football culture in the area.
Well, it's definitely like, you know, a rise to the ashes a little bit from Lindenwood and whatnot, because, you know, the transfer because they were there in NAIA when you were there, transition to Division II, and, you know, to FCS now and whatnot, and most recently picking up these two kids from East St. Louis, like keeping the homegrown talent here, like, you know, as alumni and, you know, former coach there. It's just to see that they're putting themselves on the market like that, to me, is, and I'm not even from here, but my limited involvement with the program has been like amazing to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's been great to see. I mean, just again getting to kind of look back and say, well, I helped build that, you know, for being part of the program for 10 years. And we went through some rough times when I was there.
Just a minute.
Yeah, we went there for some rough times, and we played in the national championship game, and then we make that transition and struggle, and but to see him get back to where it, you know, used to be, making playoffs, winning a lot of games has been fun. And again, just to look back and be like, I helped that. We actually have our Lindenwood alum football tournament this Friday, so we're excited to go out there and see some guys that I haven't seen, you know, in 15 years or so.
Do you still, I believe it was Coach Ross when you were there, right?
Yep.
Have you, because he's still coaching, I think he's at Ottawa.
When you were, where is he at now?
I think he's at Ottawa now, right?
No, he's at Graceland University.
Okay.
Which is in the Heart of America NAIA conference.
Which is where you went all conference in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did a little bit of research.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, so that was where we originally started. So he's back in that league now.
Did you kind of reach out to him when this was all started, like as far as, hey, I'm doing this, I know, you know, like reach out to your old coaches and whatnot? Like, who was your support system as far as, and you don't have to name names, of course, but building this program and whatnot?
Yeah, I reached out to a couple of different buddies. He actually took over the Graceland job kind of about the same time, so he had his own stuff to take care of because he took over that program and they had won a game in 3 years. So it's pretty much like starting a program from scratch. But I have another buddy that coaches in the CFL now that actually helped start the Belleville program before it closed down, but was on the ground floor. So reaching out to him and some of the other friends that I've had that have been through rebuilds and stuff like that were good resources. Just trying to tap into anybody that I could that I know. But I would say, you know, family was big for me just because everyone can give you answers a little bit, but your situation's not quite the same. So trying to lean on my family just when some stressful things would come up to kind of get me back grounded was good.
How important was it to make that transition from Boulevard to here to come back to St. Louis for you? As far as like, what did it mean to your family? Like, you know, because you're up in the up north in St. Charles, right? Still.
Yeah, we live in Crestwood now.
Okay.
But my wife's family's from St. Louis as well.
Yeah.
So it meant a lot to her family, especially. My family loves St. Louis, but they always wanted to retire in the mountains, so they've been gone for a couple of years now. But it was big for, you know, me and my wife's family. She really wanted to come. We got 2 young kids.
Yeah.
And my dad wanted me to come back too. He just isn't here anymore, but he looks at it kind of the same way as I do as far as that community of football. And St. Louis gave you so much. The fact that you get to go, you know, kind of give something back to it is a pretty awesome opportunity.
I think that's amazing to keep it all, you know, homegrown and everything like that. I think, you know, and it also provides like the stability to the kids, right? Because I'm sure when you went to the recruiting process, some coaches were like, yeah, I'm going to be doing this, and you've seen it, you know, and then they're gone, and you're kind of like, what's going on here? It's like, you know, if you were to recruit me, I'd be like, well, he's from here. He's probably not going any, you know, he's probably going to really weigh the options if, you know, USC called or something, something like that. Now, the versatility in your background for all the positions you've held, like talked about it, the many hats from special teams coordinator, run game coordinator, the video coordinator, wide receiver coach, every position except offensive line and quarterback and everything. How much has that made the Fontbonne a little bit easier from the X's and O's standpoint. I'm sure the logistics are always a daunting task of emails when you're just like, bro, I'm not trying to deal with this today. Like I guess I got to do game, prep for a game.
Yeah, that's the one thing about being a head coach is you don't have to deal with that stuff. When you're an assistant, you just say, oh, that's the head coach's problem. But from an X's and O's standpoint, I think it's been very, very helpful. We don't have a ton of full-time members on our staff right now as we're starting to build this program. So it's given me the versatility to meet with other position groups. Let's say, my wide receivers coach is busy that day because he has a normal job because he's a stipend. Well, I can step into that room. I've coached receivers before. And so it's given me a lot of versatility. I help with the special teams still. If I had it my way, I would hire a defensive coordinator at some point and be the special teams coordinator, because when the head coach is the coordinator of special teams, it takes a little bit more importance within your team. But it's been very helpful just to have that well-rounded. That's the one thing I always say to young coaches is don't, put yourself in a box as I'm a quarterback's coach or I'm a linebackers guy, because the amount of a better coach will make you to switch different positions, even if that's what you want to do. I coached offense for beginning of my career. If I ever decide to go back to offense, I'll be a lot better of an offensive coordinator now, knowing defensively what people are trying to expose. So that's something that I think some guys get into that, well, I want to be a running backs coach. Well, it's only going to make you better if you go coach linebackers, and now you know what they're thinking.
And that was my next question. It's like, obviously you were playing receiver and then learning some stuff with the DBs. It's like, is it a lot easier to transition from that? Because sometimes I feel like when you play a position, you're just like, I don't know, you just make the cut there. Like I've been doing it since I was 6. Like you do this, I move my hands this way and whatnot. Like, has that kind of grown your you've grown your game a little bit as far as with that and everything?
Yeah, luckily I played a lot of positions too. I played, in high school I played both sides of the ball. I started in college as a fullback because we were old school I, and then we switched to no fullback, 10 personnel spread, so I played slot receiver. But it definitely, makes you more rounded, gives you more tools in your toolbox as a coach when you now understand the ins and outs of why, the other person's doing what they're doing, versus, like you said, when you're playing, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, you may read the safety versus 2 and 1 and make a cut, but you don't understand what they're trying to accomplish.
So coming from Lindenwood and like being the recruiting coordinator as well at both schools, has that kind of upped your game as well as being like kind of the salesman a little bit, as far as like how do you become a recruiting coordinator? Like that's a better question.
So to me, that part isn't necessarily being a great recruiter. To me, the recruiting coordinator part is a lot more with being organized.
Okay.
Because mainly now you're talking about all the planning of the official visits and where you're going to be. The social media aspect, in some of those smaller schools, that may filter into it. It just depends on where you're at. But the recruiting coordinator title is not necessarily your best salesman. It's your most organized, who's going to, find the best deals for where you're going to eat with the best food, at least at the smaller levels. So that was probably why I got shoved into it, because I'm pretty organized.
You know how to use Microsoft Excel.
Yeah. Excel, and then
change the colors on the tabs. And exactly. When the older coaches are like, where's my defensive players? I only see
I just print it out and bring it to their desk.
Yeah, or you just, okay, Bill, you got to go to, it's going to say defensive players on the tab below. And then you go over there, he's in Microsoft Word, and you're like, dude.
Yeah, but so to me, that's more the recruiting coordinator, is just organizing, and then organizing the staff part. We always are evaluating what's the best way to send people, where to send them. Are you being fruitful where you're spending your money, especially at smaller schools? Big schools, they're going to fly out to see the best players wherever they are. Yeah. At other places, it's been like, okay, like we were talking earlier, do we want to go to Dallas? Is that going to be worth it? Is our investment going to return to us from a players that's going to help us win football games? So we've pulled out of some areas where I've been and tried to go to other areas, and whether it's always worked or not, sometimes it's just kind of trial and error, but that's more of what I would say the recruiting coordinator's aspect is.
So obviously that's another tool in the toolbox. With you dealing with, obviously right now in the beginning stages of the program with the stipend coaches and whatnot, it's all falling on you 90% of everything, right? Like,
I would say. Yeah, I have one other full-time coach, the offensive coordinator. I have a couple of guys that with their jobs are able to be around a decent amount. But yeah, there's a lot more on the plate, than I would say 2 years ago when I was at SBU, just being recruiting coordinator and the titles I had there.
So is that kind of up your game as well as a coach, is like the intestinal fortitude and like really relied, and because we talked about family a little bit, and like obviously being a coach, stressful job to begin with, adding all that, how much has that, like, your family just been even more of a supportive role in this? Because like, right now, like my job, like my family is like what gets me through some of the less than desirable conversations I have to have and whatnot.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I got a 4-year-old and 2-year-old, and what's nice, doesn't matter if I lose a recruit, win a game, lose a game, they're just happy to see Dad. So that makes it easier. It's been a learning experience, like you said.
Yeah.
So it's been fun but challenging. By no means has it been an easy transition. I wouldn't go back on it. I'm glad I made the move I did and where I'm at. But family's, time, and that's one thing I've learned too. I used to be a grinder. When I was a GA at Lindenwood, I would make it in before Coach Ross at the time, and I would not leave till he left. Well, I didn't have a family. I was a GA. I didn't have anything to do. I was just trying to get my foot in the door, and it was already in the door there, but stay there, prove that I was good enough to be hired full time. And that's something my philosophy's kind of changed as I've developed too. I've been around coaches that grind all the time, and at the end of the day, I'm going to be there for my team, but I still have a family, and I don't want to grind so much that I don't get to see my kids grow up. Because they're not going to, like I said, they're not going to remember those seasons. And for the most part, I'll remember going 10-2. I went through an 0-10 season, but I can't go back and watch my son's first step or that championship game. If I can make it, I'm going to try and make it, because those are memories that you don't get back.
Yeah. There was bring it back to me, there was a lot of guys who, when they were contracting, they'd have a kid and they're watching their kid through through the FaceTime, which is great compared to 20 years ago. But is that something you kind of saw with some of these coaches? I think you touched on it a little bit as far as, hey, like, make time for the family and all that. Like, has that been relayed by some coaches?
Yeah, luckily both of the head coaches I've worked for have been very supportive of that. Now, some of the assistant coaches on their own, not being forced by the head coach, were just grinders. And there's a place for that. I understand that's the way some people get through it. That's just, and I tried that. And when I didn't have a family, I did it, and I loved it because I love football.
Yeah.
But now that I have a family, that's not me. I want to be a part of my family, and I want them to know who I am, not just for 5 minutes at bedtime. So I think that's a personal choice, to be honest with you. Obviously, some places you don't get that choice, because if the head coach isn't like the guys I've worked for, then you don't really have a choice. But I think it's been proven that, you can win and grind, but you can also win and be supportive of your family's side. There's successful coaches that do both. I don't think there's a right answer.
You made a real easy segue into this for me. Any interview I've looked up for you specifically with Font Bond family, is that one of the core messages you're bringing in, especially in a less than traditional program in the upstarts? So something like I've told people, like doing the startups and whatnot, is like there is never a first of anything. Like, you guys are it. Like, when you guys all graduate and go and do whatever you're doing, there's going to be a picture of you guys, whether you go 10-0 or 0-10. Like, this is like, you are the guys. Is that something you've talked about them, like how forever this is for a lot of these guys?
And I tell the guys in this recruiting class too, right? We weren't great last year. We were 2-5. We should have been 5-2. That's a story for a different day. But I tell these guys the same thing. Like, you're gonna, first winning season, all the records are still there to go be set. You get to, instead of chasing ghosts, you get to be the people that are being chased and setting the records and setting the standard and building this program to be whatever it's going to be. So that's definitely been a huge recruiting pitch for us. You go to, an NAI school. Nothing wrong with going to NAI, but you're going in as a freshman. I heard a great way one of the coaches said in Alaska, we had a bunch of seniors sitting there, and he was like, right now, right, if you go back 5 years, you'd be in what grade? And they were all like, oh, I'd be 8th grade. Okay. Well, when you go to college, you're the 8th grader. Is there any 8th grader that's going to beat you right now? Well, no, sir. So you're now the redshirt freshman that's going against guys that are 5 years in the program trying to compete for a job. You're coming into our place right now. You're recruiting with the freshmen that are still there, and luckily our whole league's new, so it's even across the board, which has been nice, because I know you start a program and go like William Woods is starting a program out in Missouri. They're going to go in and play teams that have been around for a while, so I didn't have to take quite the beating that they probably will. But I think that's a great recruiting pitch for us, is that opportunity to come in and play now. That recruiting pitch is about to be up and about. Maybe one more year I can sell that, but that's been great for us too.
Have you talked to other coaches, like I think his name is Coach Mendez over there? Have you guys all like kind of talked from all across the country of like, hey, I'm starting this up? Like, is there kind of like a, simplify it, a group chat of a bunch of you guys of like?
No, not really. I mean, there was a coach that reached out to me when I did this that I didn't know very much.
Yeah.
I'd run into him a couple times, and he was like, hey, I see you're starting a program. I started a program if you have any questions. So if Coach Mendez happens to watch this and has any questions, I'd be more than happy, because there's just some things that you don't anticipate.
Just not prepared for.
Yeah, you're not prepared for. And again, every place is going to be different, so he may have different issues there. But there should be a group chat. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll start one. I'll do it's the MVCS, is that the MVCSL or something?
Yeah.
I'll just do a tour, or just get everyone's number and just like, hey, by the way, if you guys, because I feel like it's just with any program just starting out. I mean, it's getting redundant like talking about it at this point, but it's just so much drinking from the fire hose. Like when I stand up a new contract, it's like, you pitch it to the client and whatnot. You're like, yeah, we could do this. And then you start looking at it, you're like,
Oh, I didn't foresee that. I didn't foresee that. Yeah. I mean, that with the league starting, a lot of us coaches did bounce some ideas off each other. More so was like, hey, the helmets are hard to find this year. How'd you get yours? And luckily I ordered mine well in advance, so I was on the lucky end. But I mean, people were scrapping just to find any advice they could, and we did do a good job as a league of kind of most of the coaches bouncing ideas. Some of us don't necessarily always get along, but that's football.
That's just you put a bunch of dudes who know everything in one group chat. It's simplify it. There's going to be a couple people who don't respond. I think that's pretty important though. Like something, you see a lot of like tribalism in life and whatnot. It's like, hey man, we need this to work, because if we all hate each other, like this does not work, we're unemployed.
Correct. And I think that's something that's different about this league, right? Like you said, we're all like, if this league doesn't succeed, we're all searching for jobs, regardless of whether our school's doing well or not. If all the other schools in the league shut down or don't have enough people, so I think that's been kind of the nice part, is we're all kind of at the same spot, not just from like player standpoint, but trying to build it so we want each other to be successful to some standpoint other than the Saturday we're playing them.
Yeah.
We want the league to succeed, because that if it doesn't succeed, we're all out of luck.
You go 6-1 for 5 years and then don't have a program for 25. Like,
doesn't help you much.
Yeah, congrats, man. You stole all the resources and whatnot.
Yeah, no doubt. So it's been a learning experience as a league too. You know, because we had a meeting as a league, and we're not NCAA, we're not NAI, we're not D3, so we, as coaches and ADs, pretty much made the rules for the league.
I mean, that's what makes it so cool though, and that's like. When I like we talked about earlier, I knew what sprint football was in the Northeast. I didn't realize how I guess unique it was to the Northeast. But now you guys change all the rules, and it's like from when you're at Lindenwood, and it's like, man, I can't believe NAI is doing this, or D2 or D2 is doing this. It's like we could be those guys.
We don't have to do it that way.
Yeah, we could just. Yeah, I don't like this. Okay, does anyone have a better solution? Yeah, I do. Okay, what is it? Yeah, we should do that. All in favor, say aye.
Right. So it's been fun. There's been some not so pleasant conversations because we don't all agree, but it's been cool to have that, not only that stamp on your own program, but that league and this style of football as well. You have more of a input on stuff than you would if you just took a job at William Woods, and you got to follow the NAI rules, the conference rules. We kind of have input on that as coaches, which is unique. You don't get that anywhere else. So that's been kind of one of the unforeseen benefits, because I didn't think about that when I took the job, right? I didn't think, you never set the rules.
Yeah, you never had to. You're just kind of like, all right, this has been the constitution of this league for years. Like, who am I to change it? And you're like, there is none. I can write one.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean? So just to close it down a little bit, I don't want to take too much of your time, but what is your ultimate goal for this program?
You know, my ultimate goal for the program would be, again, to continue to grow it, to help our university. And the one thing that I think is unique about Fontbonne is we talked about family earlier, and that would have been one of my goals no matter where I was.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a family. Most of the programs I've been in have had that as a foundation. And everybody says that nowadays in recruiting. Oh, we're a family. Well, I've been places or at times where we said that and it didn't seem like that. And then I've been places that you could truly feel it when you walked in the building. And I think our campus is like that because we are a small campus.
Yeah.
You know, I know the president. I can go knock on her door. If she's in a meeting and I have a recruit, she'll pop out of the meeting real quick to say hello. That doesn't generally happen anywhere. So I think that's been easy. So I want us to be proud of the product we're putting on the field and the students we're putting in the classroom. You know, obviously I'd love for us to be continue to grow it and be a powerhouse for our league. But more importantly, I want to create young men that are giving back to this community or going back to the communities that they're from, because we have young men that are coming from rough backgrounds. So this is an opportunity for them to be a leader in their respective cities and neighborhoods and things like that when they go back home.
That's awesome. Now, Coach, where can people find you and Fontbonne at on the social medias?
Yep. So my social media is just at Coach Bortle, and that's Bortle. And then Fontbonne, we have a Fontbonne Sprint Football. You can just look up that on Twitter, and I run that as well. So it's kind of going to be crossover. But
Yeah, both. I got 2 new followers when the other day when Coach and I first talked. So if you follow him, you might get 2 new followers for the kids, man.
Absolutely.
I know they're all about this follower count.
It is. That's a whole other conversation. But Twitter, man, that has changed the recruiting game.
We can talk about that off camera. But Coach, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great.